Good morning. The first reading this morning is from Psalm 147, chapters 1 through 11, and your response will be found in the bulletin. Praise the Lord. How good it is to sing praises to our God. For he is gracious, and a song of praise is fitting. The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the outcasts of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He determines the number of the stars. He gives to all of them their names. Great is our Lord and abundant in power. His understanding is beyond measure. The Lord lifts up the downtrodden. He casts the wicked to the ground. Sing to the Lord with thanksgiving. Make melody to our God on the lyre. He covers the heavens with clouds, prepares rain for the earth, makes grass grow on the hills. He gives to the animals their food, and to the young ravens when they cry. His delight is not in the strength of the horse, nor his pleasure in the speed of a runner. But the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him, in those who hope in his steadfast love. Praise the Lord. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Our second scripture lesson this morning comes from the 13th Gospel of Luke, the 13th chapter, verses 10 through 17. Let us listen again for the word of God. Now Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things he was doing. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So what is your name? What name do you go by? What nicknames have you been given over the years? What special names do those closest to you call you? I go by Tami, or Reverend Seidel, or Pastor Tami, Ms. Seidel, sometimes Mrs. Lowe. My kids call me Mama, Mommy, Mom. One of my best friends likes to call me TJ. My dad calls me Tootsie. We all go by many different names. Some are professional, some are personal, some are sentimental, some are descriptive, some are funny, some are not. But all names have the power to shape who we are and who we become. Methodist bishop and pastor William Willimon tells about meeting a friend for lunch one day, someone he hadn't seen in a while. The man was middle-aged and in good shape, but he refused to join Willimon in eating a bowl of ice cream for dessert after lunch. Willimon pressed him on this a bit, tempting him with the forbidden calories and saying, "Why on earth are you so concerned about your weight? You're not fat." "But I was," he replied. "Really?" Willimon asked. "That must have been a long time ago." "It was," the man replied. "As a kid, they called me Chubby. and that name has stuck with me all through college. I hated it. I smiled when they said it, but inside I was dying. I swore to God that one day nobody would call me that. There's no doubt about it. Names can be uplifting, or they can be crippling to a person's self-esteem. Our scripture lesson today is about a woman who was known to the people in her world by one name and one name only, the crippled woman. The Greek word here is kyphotic. I love that word. It means bent over. It was or bent in on yourself. This woman was so deformed that her body was bent inward on itself, and she literally could not stand up straight. We do not know what caused her deformity. Maybe it was an extreme case of osteoporosis. Maybe she had been injured or abused. Maybe she had just been carrying too many burdens, be they physical or emotional or spiritual, for too long. We don't know, but she had been this way for 18 years, so long that no one even remembered what she looked like before this. This infirmity completely controlled her life, how she moved and ate and slept, where she went, whom she talked to. She was crippled not only in body, but in mind and spirit, too. Everyone looked down on her, both literally and socially, because back then people believed that physical deformities were a sign of God's displeasure. She must have done something terribly wrong to look like that, they thought. In the eyes of the world, this woman had no identity, apart from this one defining characteristic. She was the kyphotic woman. She was the crippled woman. Until Jesus saw her. Jesus happened to be preaching and teaching in the local synagogue one Sabbath day, and as his eyes scanned the crowd that had gathered to listen, he saw her. He saw her hunched back. He saw the pain with which she moved. He saw her isolation and her loneliness. He saw her broken spirit. And he didn't think twice about what to do next. Jesus called the woman over and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." Then he laid his hands on her bent back, and immediately she stood up straight and began to praise God. Jesus said, "You are set free." Notice he didn't say that she was healed, although she was. He didn't say that her sins were forgiven, although I'm sure they were. Jesus said, "You are set free." Free from the physical pain and deformity, free from all of the limitations it had put on her life, free from the staring eyes and judgmental looks from the people around her, free from the isolation and loneliness, free from the spiritual stranglehold her condition had on her life. Now she was free, free to stand up and look people in the eye, free to stand up and face her future with hope, free to stand up and become the person God created her to be. That's why she praised God. Except there was at least one person there that day that was not too happy with Jesus and what he had done for this woman. The leader of the synagogue became quite indignant, and he was afraid to address Jesus directly. So he turned to the crowd and said, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days if you want to be cured, not on the Sabbath day." Now, poor guy, I can kind of sympathize with him. He was probably an overworked pastor who spent all week working with and caring for people and looking forward to focusing on worship on the Sabbath day. He had probably prepared a great sermon to preach, and now he was being upstaged by this renegade rabbi, Jesus. He was probably a Presbyterian, too, because he liked things done decently and in order. There were very specific rules about which kinds of work could be done on the Sabbath and which kinds couldn't. In a life or death situation, it was okay to heal somebody on the Sabbath. But this woman had been like this for 18 years. A couple of more hours wouldn't have killed her. Now Jesus was walking all over the law and acting like it didn't mean anything. Well, not in his synagogue, not today. Jesus' response to the religious leaders there that day was quick and direct. "You hypocrites," he said, "it's okay for you to untie your ox or your donkey and lead him to water, but it's not okay for me to release this woman from her bondage, from 18 years of pain and heartache and alienation. This woman who, by the way, is a daughter of Abraham. Shame on you," Jesus said. You see, the leader of the synagogue and his colleagues, they were trapped too, bound by rules and traditions that kept them from seeing the amazing, liberating things God was doing in their midst in the person of Jesus. The Sabbath is a day to set aside our daily work and concerns so that we can focus on God and God's work in the world. And God's work is the work of liberation, freeing people from all of the things that bind them and keep them from being the people God created them to be. When Jesus frees the woman from her ailment, he gives her a new identity. He calls her a daughter of Abraham. This woman is a child of the promise, a child of the covenant that God made with Abraham so long ago. In that covenant, God promised to bless Abraham and make of him a great nation, a nation that would, in turn, become a blessing to all of the nations of the world. Now this woman, this bent and broken woman, is an heir to God's promises and blessings. Even more than that, now she is called to be a blessing to the nations, to be part of God's liberating work in the world. No wonder she can stand tall and praise God. She has a new identity, a new purpose in God. As the Apostle Paul might say, she is a new creation. Her old life is gone, her new life has begun. That's the way God works. God frees us from our burdens and all those things that define us and limit us and keep us down. God frees us and gives us a new identity and purpose. That's the good news that Jesus came to teach us and show us and to invite us to be a part of. When you reflect on your life, maybe on the names that you are called or have been called, what burdens are weighing you down and keeping you from the freedom that Jesus brings? What is bending you over today? A broken body or a broken relationship? Anxieties or fears about the state of our world? What burdens are you carrying? Debt or other financial obligations? Caring for a sick child or an aging parent? A problem that you just can't find a solution for? What has you bent out of shape? A coworker or a friend who offended or hurt you? A policy at work or school that just doesn't seem fair? Some greater injustice in the world? Think about it. What is keeping you down and keeping you from being the person God created you to be? Pastor Randy Riggs once told a story about a thank you note that he had received after doing a funeral. The note came from the daughter of the man who had died, and this is what she wrote to him. "Thanks for all you did, but thank you most of all for pointing me to God. After the funeral was over, I realized I had spent my entire life trying to make my father proud of me. He was never able to tell me if I had succeeded. But somehow, in the midst of the service, I realized that pleasing Dad wasn't nearly as important as pleasing God. Then I realized that God was pleased with me because of Jesus. Suddenly, the burden of years of trying to be perfect were lifted like a shawl from my shoulders, and I felt free. Free to be myself, free to love my family, free to honor my God. Thank you, she wrote to him, for the gift of freedom in Jesus. The good news today and every day is that Jesus has come to set you free, to give you a new identity and a sense of purpose. That doesn't mean that all of your problems will be solved and your body's healed, your bills paid, or that your burdens will just disappear. But it does mean that they no longer define who you are. You are a son or daughter of Abraham, a child of the promise, an heir to God's blessings, called to be a blessing to others in all the circumstances of your life and our life together. You are free to stand up and be who God created you to be. That is the good news. Like the woman in our story, let us praise God. Like the crowd, let us rejoice at all of the wonderful things that God is doing in our midst through Jesus Christ. Amen.